Caution, you may learn something in this video. Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel. On today's episode, I'm going to address a request that I've gotten from a lot of my subscribers. And that request is, can you please make a video that shows me how to build my first model kit? Apparently, a lot of my subscribers are not active model builders. In fact, many of them have never even built a model kit. So this video is for all of you. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the basics and step-by-step on how to go about building your first model kit. Also, I will not be using any special tools or fancy paints or glues. Everything will be done with just the basics, and everything here is readily available at your local Walmart, Hobby Lobby, or even most craft stores. So this video is going to include the following. Where and how do I go about purchasing my first model kit? Supplies you will need and where to purchase them, IDing and familiarizing you with common terminology and names used in this hobby, how to read and understand the instructions that came with your model kit, how to use the tools, paint, and glues, how to assemble your first model kit, how to paint your first model kit, and how to apply decals. Now, please allow me to add a little disclaimer here. The steps and procedures I'm going to present in this video are basic and not the only way to accomplish this. This is the way I do it, and I believe that this will help and encourage people to take that first step to becoming a scale model builder. Also, there are some dangers here, so please follow all the appropriate safety warnings and instructions on any of the tools and paints and glues that we'll be using. For you younger viewers out there, please get supervision from a grown-up. Okay, so without further ado, let's get to it. Okay, so the first thing is where and how to go about purchasing your first model kit. Now, when I was a kid, model kits were sold everywhere. That's not the case today, but lately it seems to be getting a little better. I recently purchased some model kits from our local Walmart, and as far as I know, they haven't sold model kits in well over a decade or more. So, if you're fortunate enough to have an actual hobby store in your area, that's going to be your best bet. Otherwise, places like Hobby Lobby and some craft stores may have to do. There is also the online options. You can get models from Amazon, and there are a lot of hobby stores that sell online as well. I'll leave some links to some of these in the description of this video. Okay, step one is locate a model kit that is interesting to you. Now that may be a car or a truck, a ship or an airplane. There are a lot to choose from, so you should be able to find something that perks your interest. The next step is going to be to find one that best fits your skill level. Now, manufacturers often assign a skill level to their kits. Typically, 1 is easy and 5 is most challenging. The ratings may be different depending on the manufacturer, and sometimes it's more of an age rating, like 8+. Sometimes they even use both an age rating and a skill level. The key here is to not start off with a complicated kit that is far above your experience level. If you do, you may just be setting yourself up for a failure. Remember, this hobby's main intent is to be a fun and enjoyable experience. You don't want a hobby to add stress to your life. Okay, so these are the two kits that I've chosen to use for this video. This first one is actually pretty close to not even really being a model kit, but it technically is, and it will work well for this demonstration. Now, this is the 1/24 scale Ford Mustang Boss 302. This particular kit, the body is made out of cast metal, and the rest of the parts are plastic. Also, the body and all the parts have already been painted and detailed to match the actual car. So there's no gluing, there's no painting required. It's basically just open the box and put the kit together. Now, if you're not into cars, there's other kits similar to this. I'll throw up a few on the screen here. They have cars, trucks, tanks, military equipment, helicopters, all kinds of really basic beginner model kits like this that require no paint, no glue. You just basically read the instructions and put them together. That's why I chose this kit, because it's a good place to get started. And maybe this right here is the best first model kit for you. All right, the next kit I chose for this video is the Taco Trike. Now, this is an MPC kit that has recently been reissued by Round 2 Models. It's part of their Trike series. There's a whole bunch of different trikes like this to choose from. The reason I picked this kit is because it is an actual glue together kit. It does require you to glue the parts together. It also, you should paint it. If you choose not to paint it for this tutorial, that is fine too, but it is, an easy kit to paint and make your own. This is also a much better representation of what an actual model kit is going to be like. And by going through this kit, I'll be able to teach you all of the common terminology and words that are associated with building models and things you'll just need to know. Now, if you decide you don't want to mess with the gluing part of this, you could find another kit that's what's called a snap tight kit, which means the parts just snap fit together and there's no glue needed. If that's what you would prefer, there are a lot of kits out there to choose from. I'll throw a few pictures up of some good quality snap together kits that you can pick up reasonably inexpensive and will be another good beginning build for you. But in this video, I wanted to at least get into the whole gluing pieces together part of it, because if you find that you like building model kits and you want to advance in the hobby, then that's the direction you're going to go. That's why I want to cover it in this particular video. All right, now on to the next section. Okay. Now that you have your model kit selected, you're going to need to get some tools and supplies to build it. Once again, I'm not using any fancy tools here, just the basics that you should easily be able to pick up just about anywhere. The first thing we're going to need to build this kit is glue. Now, you need to get actual model glue for this because it's formulated specifically for plastic models. The glue doesn't just stick the parts together, it actually melts the materials so they essentially become one piece. We're going to use this basic old school model glue that I also picked up at Walmart. If they don't sell this at your local Walmart, you should be able to find it at a Hobby Lobby or most craft stores. Now, special note here, there are many options when it comes to different types of model glue, but the cost of those are going to be higher, and again, this is just for the basics, so we're starting off with just our basic supplies. Okay, the next supply we're going to need is paint. Now, I also picked this up at Walmart, but you have a lot of other options when it comes to paint. This package of paints I picked up at Walmart are your basic primary colors, and they're acrylic, which means they're water-based. That means they're also non-toxic and clean up easily with water. Now, if you can't find these particular paints, don't worry, you have lots of options, because at most craft stores and Walmart, they sell craft paint. Now, craft paint is also acrylic and water-based. You just want to make sure you get some that say they're multi-surface. Now, craft paints are great because they come in so many colors, and you can even mix colors to make other colors. So really your possibilities are almost endless. Now, if you're going to have to paint a larger area like the body of a car or something, you may want to get some spray paint. Now, you can buy hobby spray paint, but keep in mind it's not going to be inexpensive. Some of them actually cost quite a bit, and some of the times you're only getting a small can. I actually like using this Rust-Oleum brand, but you don't have to use Rust-Oleum brand. It's just that this is readily available in most hardware stores and other places, and it's fairly inexpensive. The other reason I think this is a good paint for a beginner is because the paint and primer are all together in one can. Normally, when you paint a model kit, you'll want to clean the model kit, the plastic up, spray paint a primer on the body, and then after that dries, paint the actual paint color on top of the primer. The primer gives the paint something to stick to. This already has the primer mixed in with the paint, so it's basically a one shot. Now, on the downside of this, it does come out very heavily, but when we paint, I'll go over how to lightly mist on your paint to get it started and then cover the entire kit. They do sell certain kinds of spray paints that are acrylic, and that would be a good possible solution for you. However, it's not a must. Just make sure when you're using this, you're in an open, well-ventilated area, most likely outside, because the fumes from these can be pretty harsh. Now that we have our kits, our glue, and our paints, we can move on to the tools section. Again, for the most part, we're going to be using basic tools. However, there is one specific tool that is pretty much a must for building a scale model. That tool is called a hobby knife or an X-Acto knife. These can be purchased anywhere, so finding one should be easy, but please be careful with this tool. It is extremely sharp and can seriously injure you. It's also a good idea to get one with a protective cover, and that's also roll resistant. And by roll resistant, I mean if you take the cover off and put it on the back like you would a pen, you can use the blade, but if you set it down, it won't roll. The protective cover has these little ears on it that keep it from rolling, so it won't accidentally roll off the table or your desk and fall down and poke you in the leg. Yes, that has happened. You may also want to pick up a cutting board, or if you don't want a cutting board, just get a nice piece of wood or some thick cardboard to do your cutting on so you don't cut into your kitchen table or your desktop. The next tool we're going to need are some sanding sticks. Now, they do make sanding sticks that are specifically designed for scale models. However, most of them are quite a bit more expensive than what I'm going to show you here. This here is just your standard nail file that can be picked up at any drugstore, Walmart, or wherever in the beauty or cosmetics aisles or anywhere where they sell like fingernail polish. Now these come in different grits. This one's got a rough grit on one side and a finer grit on the other. That's what you want. Some also come in larger sizes and are a little more flexible and padded. These are also good. Again, you've got an extra fine grit on one side and a fine grit on the other. So this one is going to be a lot finer than this one. Some sticks actually come with more than one surface, more than two surfaces. Like this is front and back. This is actually three. You've got a shiny part, which is a very fine grit. You've got the buff, which is a kind of a heavy grit. And then you've got a polish, which is between this and this grit. Again, these are all very inexpensive and nice tools to grab. The next tool you're going to need is some tape. I find that painter's tape works well and again, very readily available. The one thing you'll want to do with painter's tape is, even though it's designed to be easily removed, it's still pretty sticky. So before you use it on your parts, especially if you're masking off a part that's already been painted, I'd like to stick it to something and remove it a few times before I stick it to the part. That way when I go to remove it, it comes off easier. And the other good thing about this tape is it doesn't leave a lot of heavy residue behind. If it does leave a little residue behind, you can usually clean it up with a little water. The last thing you're going to need is a well-lit area to actually build your model. This could be a kitchen table, could be your desk in your bedroom. It just needs to be an area where you've got room to work and it's well lit so you can actually see what you're doing. So now that we have everything, we have our model kits, we have our supplies, our tools, our paint, we're ready to go. So without further ado, let's get to the build. Okay, so we're gonna get started by building this first kit. And again, this isn't technically a plastic model kit. The body is all die-cast metal. All the parts are already separated, they're painted, they're detailed, everything's here. You just basically open the box, put it together, but it will teach us some basics like following instructions and things like that. So I'm gonna get this unboxed and then we'll get right into it. Okay, so here is the kit completely unboxed. We'll go over the individual parts first. This particular kit comes with two sets of wheels. So you have the option of the all black wheels with the silver trim or the all silver wheels. I'm gonna go with the black wheels on mine. The bottom chassis part is all one piece and it has the axles and everything already in place. You'll just slip the wheels right over that. The interior, this is the main part of the interior, the floor, the back seat, and the center console. Again, pretty much already painted and detailed. Not bad for this level of kit. There are some kind of smudges of paint that I can see, but we're not going to worry about that. We have a box of other parts, including the door panels, the chin guard and spoiler, the engine. This is actually the entire engine in one piece, the Boss 302 right there, you can see it. So pretty nicely detailed. We've got the seats, we've got the tires, we have some small parts, we've got side mirrors, we've got the steering wheel, the windshield, some stickers, we've got the gear shift. We've got 2 stickers for the reflective, these are reflective stickers for the side mirrors. And we've got a couple of screws because this kit actually screws everything to the body of the car. Then we have the body of the car in die cast. The hood is hinged and will open. The doors, well, it's taped right now, but the doors will open and close. And not a bad looking paint job on the body. The rear glass and the side windows are already in place. The rear looks very nice. And it even comes with a Phillips screwdriver because you will be screwing the bottom into the top of the body of the car. So you get a bonus. You get to have a nice little cheap screwdriver to have around. Okay, now let's get into the more detailed part of this. These are the assembly instructions. Now, no matter what the model is or the skill level, do yourself a big favor and always read through the instructions completely first before you even begin. I don't know how many times I've skipped this step and found myself having to work backwards to undo certain things to make everything work right. So again, this is very basic instructions. It's one sheet, it's 6 steps, okay? Up here, it just gives you a little bit of a disclaimer, some warnings. It tells you you should have 2 of these screws. It also has a picture of those little decals, shiny decals for the mirrors. There's a left, there's a right. And then it goes into the steps that you do for putting them all together. Now, normally you just follow the steps, okay? Especially on a build like this, you're just gonna start with step 1, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. Once all those steps are done, 1.5, once all these are done, then you move to step 2. And we're going to go through each of these together. And then when you get to the end, you'll have a completed model. Now again, this kit doesn't require any paint or glue, so this one's going to go pretty quick. So stand by and we'll get started with step 1. Okay, step 1 is going to have us install the engine unit, the side view mirror, the windshield, the inner door panel, the other window, and the rear view mirror. So what we're going to do next is get all of those parts ready, ID'd, and then we'll start assembling. Okay, so now we have our parts, our engine component, our front windshield, our side mirrors, our rear view mirrors, our stickers for those side view mirrors, and our door panels. So the first thing we're going to do is step 1, which is install the engine module into the car. So on the instructions, you can see it kind of tells you to slide the engine compartment or the engine unit in at an angle, down and in. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so here we go. Just put this down in here. Kind of wiggle it in there. All right, and there you have it. We have our engine installed. All right, on to the next step. Okay, the next step is to attach the side view mirror to the body. Now, it also says to install that shiny sticker to the side view mirror, so I'm going to do that first and then we'll attach the mirror to the body. So the first thing you're going to want to do, since there's 2 of these mirrors, we're going to put the stickers on both of them now. So the first thing I want to do is figure out which is the right one and which is the left one, which I have, and then we're going to take our shiny stickers and we're going to apply them to the part. Now you can kind of see on this part, it's angled outward on the left and inward on the right. So that means that we can see which decal goes there, and it's the bottom one. So let's get the bottom one off here and we'll attach it. And these are pretty thick. They are sticky stickers. They're not like water decals like some model kits. Okay, so now this is actually going to be a little challenging for me because I have big fat fingers, but let's get it in there. Oh, come on. And again, this is, take your time. It's supposed to be fun. All right, so there's our first mirror. Now let's do the other one. Same process as before, except now you already know which mirror this one is going on. Wow, those are just so tiny. Let's see if I can do it on this hand here a little better. All right, there we go. Now we have both side mirrors, and they actually look like mirrors. Get that back in frame. Okay, so now we're going to attach the right mirror to the right side of the car. Stand by. Okay, so to get the mirror in, you need to open the door. And if you can look here, it's kind of hard to see. Let's see if we can do it this way. Nope. Okay. So there is a pin here where the mirror will go into. The mirror has a hole on this side, so it's going to slip in here and just snap over that little pin, and now the mirror is installed. There we go. So now let's install the other mirror. Actually, no, let's not install the other mirror. The next step is to install the inner door panel on this side, which is this piece. Now, on the inside of the door, there's two pins here sticking out. On the inside of the door panel, there's two parts with holes, and that's those pins are going to go in those holes, and that's going to snap it in place. Again, you've got two of these, so you want to make sure you have the right side and left side. So this is the right side, so let's install it. Just put it over. It's really hard for you guys to see what I'm doing here, but I'm trying. I'll put that over. This is harder than it looks, folks. It's hard to do this on camera and see what I'm doing, no less show you how to do it. Okay, we're on our pins, and we just give it some pressure, and boom. All right, our door panel is installed. Okay, the next step is to attach the main windshield to the car. So let's do that now. Okay, we're going to take our windshield. Now the instruction says to drop the window in from the top, so that's what we're going to do. There are a couple tabs on this side and a couple tabs on the top, and there are holes here and holes up here. So let's line up those tabs, get them in there, a little press, and boom, those are on. Now, because this is going to be closed up, I'm going to take a little towel. I've got a little microfiber towel, but you can use anything. And I'm actually going to clean the glass a little bit because I've got fingerprints all over it now. But I won't be able to get to this once it's done. So I'm also going to clean off the back window, just like so. The outside we can clean later because we can get to the outside. All right. Now that that's done, the next step is the rear view mirror. The rear view mirror is right here. And it looks like it just simply snaps into this little hole. All right, like so. Now our rear view mirror has been installed. Okay, the next step is the other side view mirror and the other inner door panel. So we're going to do that now. So just like before, open the door, take our mirror, make sure it lines up on that pin, and there we have our mirror installed. Sorry, on that side. And now, same thing with the door panel. We're going to line up those pins. Oops. We're going to line up the pins on the door with the holes in the part. Here we go. Press it in place. All right. All right, so we have our engine, our side view mirrors, our inner door panels, and our windshield, and our rear view mirrors. So step 1 in the instructions is complete. Now we can move on to step 2. Here we are in step 2 of the instructions, but you'll notice there's a little square up here. This is drawing your attention to special notes. So on this part, which starts with step 6, because we ended with step 5 over here, we have step 6 is put this decal, and the decal is labeled differently. It has a red lettering and it says L1. And if we look on our sticker sheet, there it is, you have L1. So that's telling you L1 in the instructions is talking about the L1 sticker, which is the dash cluster gauge set. So the instructions are telling us to install that sticker on the dashboard before we go to step 7, which is install the steering wheel, which makes sense because if you put the steering wheel on first, you're going to have a really hard time getting that sticker in there. So let's do that now. All right, so here we have our dashboard, and it's actually very well detailed. I've driven these cars, real life cars before, and it looks pretty good in comparison. So we're going to take our sticker and we're going to put it on there. Okay, now these stickers are quite a bit thinner than the stickers we did for the side view mirrors. So we're just going to line it up as best we can. Oops. So because I have rather large fingers, normally I would use a pair of tweezers, but you guys may not have access to a pair of tweezers, so I'm not going to use them. All right, so there we have our dashboard unit in there. That looks pretty good. And now we can install our steering wheel, and the steering wheel simply just snaps in. Like so. All right, that step is done. So on to the next step. Okay, so our next step, step 8, is to install the dashboard into the body of the car. So let's do that now. All right, so here's our body of the car. It's upside down, just like in the instructions. The dashboard will have to be upside down. And then it just, if you follow the little arrows, it says to slide it down in here. So that's what we're gonna do. All right, snap that in there all the way. Maybe. If we open the doors. Yeah, so you have to have the doors open, and it does actually show in the instructions the doors open, see? All right, and it looks like that is installed. Close the doors, yep, so now we've got our dashboard and steering wheel parts installed. On to the next step. Okay, so our next step is to start installing the interior. So we have our main base for the interior, our seats, and our gear shift lever. So let's do that now. Okay, we've got our parts. Now it says in the instructions that step 9 is the shifter lever. So we're going to put step 9 in first. We're going to take our shifter lever, blah, blah, blah. We're going to install it right in there. Okay, and that's done. And then we're going to install our seats. Now see how the little red squiggly lines kind of say to kind of put it down and compress it in, so that's what we're going to do. So we're going to put this in first, and then we're going to, maybe? Oh, I see. So this part has to go in first. So we'll put that back in there somehow. Wait a minute. Hold on. Look at that. They're different. So the seats are different, which is weird. They didn't specify that the seats are different per side, but that's part of model building. The directions are not always going to be perfect. So let's try this now. Let's put our seat in there. Press in the little tab. All right, and then we have a click, seats in. We'll do the same with this side. All right, now our interior is done. Let's move on to the next step. Okay, our next step, step 11, is to install the seats onto the chassis of the car, and then we're going to do our tires and our wheels. So let's get that done. All right, so here we have our chassis. Make sure we've got the front and back ID'd. So the engine's up here, the exhaust is in the back, the engine's in the front. We'll take our seats. Again, we've got two little places for pins to go, and here we have our two little pins. So we're going to line those up. Push them down in place. All right, and now we have that done. So next, we get to do our wheels and tires. For our wheels and tires, you take a wheel and you slip the tire on, and it doesn't look like there's a difference on which way the tire goes. So we're just gonna kind of stretch it over. There we go. And these tires are rubber and they are stretchy, but you don't want to stretch them too much because I have seen them break. Okay, so there's one. Let's get the next one on. All right. 2. Okay, 3. And 4. All right, the next step is to simply put the wheels on the axles. So let's do that now. Push those on. Push that on. Push that on. All right, so there we have our interior and our wheels and tires. All right, on to the next step. Okay, so the next step, 5, has us installing the front spoiler and the rear spoiler. So 16 is the first number, so we'll do that one first. All right, so let's do the next step. We'll take our front spoiler, locate your pins, locate these, get it started on there. Whoops, that's the wrong piece. Let's start with the right piece. Locate your pins, get it on there, press them in like so. All right, now for the back part. Now this one has a couple of there's little notches here on the sides, and those actually get snapped over this on both sides. So we want to watch that, but we've got our main locator pins here. Get it started. Make sure that this goes in that little slot. Make sure this goes in the little slot. Push them on. All right. Looking good. Let's go on to the next step. Okay, so now we're on our final step of the instructions, and we've got another little square here. So this is telling us, hey, pay attention to this. So we've got an L2, which is decal L2, which is the Ford logo. License plate is basically what it is, and they want us to stick this on the back of the car. So that's what we're going to do first, and then we're basically putting the chassis, the wheels, and the interior on the bottom of the body and screwing it together. So let's get that done. Okay, so we're going to take our license plate sticker and put it there. And again, just take it nice and slow. Take our time. Nope, that looks a little off. Let's see if we can do better for that. There we go. All right. Got our license plate. Now, the next step is to turn the body over, take our chassis, flip it over. Now, here you've got a big post here and a big post here, and they're threaded. Those are what the screws are going to go into. On this side, you've got this post that's going to go over that, and this post in the back that's going to go over that. So you want to kind of line them up. Okay, so it looks like we need to slide this end in first underneath that rear spoiler. And then, oh, look at that. Lines right up. All right, so now we'll just put our screws in. Okay, so we've got our body, and we've got our screws. Now I'm gonna set this down so I can do this. On a shiny surface like this, it's really nice looking, so just put a little towel down so you're not scratching up that paint. Okay, let's get this into frame here. Take our screwdriver, start our screwdriver, drop it in the hole. The screws are not the greatest. This is not smooth, but you can feel it going in. You don't want to over tighten it. You'll know when it's tight. And we'll take our second screw and drop that in the hole. All right, the screws are in. So now we'll just take our nice little cloth here. We'll buff this body up. All right, and there we have our completed model of a Boss 302 with opening doors and opening hood. Not a bad little kit, I will tell you. Some of the parts are a little finicky, but you persist, and if you're patient and you persist, no reason you can't put that together, and now you've got a nice little model to put on your shelf and say, hey, I built that. Okay, so this one is complete. So the next step is we're going to actually build the full model of the taco trike. So stand by and we'll get right into that. Okay, now it's time to get started on the taco trike. Now again, this is a glue together plastic model kit, unlike the other one where we didn't have to use any glue. This one will also require some painting, but if you don't want to mess with painting and you just want to build it as it is out of the box, that's okay. And I also want to stress, you can go by the pictures on the boxes and all this and kind of make up your own mind as to how you want it to look, but the most important thing is make it how you want it to look. It doesn't have to look exactly like it does on the box. If you want to paint this red, white, and blue, paint it red, white, and blue. If it wants to be purple and pink, paint it purple and pink. It's whatever you want it to be. Okay, so let's get right into this. All right, all of our parts are going to be packaged typically in plastic bags, which is good. One note here, never throw anything away until you're completely done with the kit. I don't know how many times I've accidentally thrown something out thinking I don't need that, or a bag or something that had a part loose floating around in it and I lost it. So do yourself a favor, don't throw anything away until you're completely done with the kit. Also, hold on to your boxes, especially during the build, because the boxes are great for holding loose pieces or storing parts or subsections of parts until you're ready to use them, and it helps to keep you from, misplacing things. Also, keep in mind, even on a simple kit like this, it's not a quick build. It's not like you're going to sit down one morning and finish this throughout the day. I mean, you could, but if you're going to be painting, it's probably going to take you at least a few days because you'll want to let things dry, and that just takes time. So be patient when you're going into this, and just expect for it to take a while to do. Okay, so let's get into what's in the box. So our first bag has the white plastic parts, and these are all molded in white. Looks like we have the two sides of the body. We've got the interior, we've got the engine. Looks like some backs of the wheels, a seat, and a couple other parts in there. Looks like the intake manifold. So let's set that aside. Here we have what's referred to as the chrome tree. All of these parts are chromed, so they're basically plated to make them look that way. Underneath this chrome is just regular white plastic. So here we've got our front wheels, our rear wheels, our exhaust pipes, valve covers, oil pan, some front steering parts. They look really nice. Okay, next we have our two rear tires. These are soft vinyl rubbery. Oh, and they've got two different sides. On the one side, it's got these little red flames. On the other side, it's got says Race Master. So those are pretty nice looking. Here we have our single front tire, also rubber. Here we have a little bag with just a metal axle in it. This is an important part. You definitely don't want to lose that. Here we have our clear parts, which this kit gives you options. So you have windshield and light lenses in clear, in a purple, and in an orange. All right. Next we have our instruction sheet. We'll go over this more in a moment. And then finally, we have this bag with our decals in it. We will go into this later on as well, but a good rule of thumb is to leave these sealed in the plastic for as long as you can. Keeps them safe and dry. Also, with your clear parts, you'll want to leave these in the plastic as well until you're ready to use them, because it keeps them from getting scratched up or damaged or lost. All right. So we're going to put everything back in the box and we're going to go over the instructions. Okay, so here we have our instruction sheet. Now, the first thing you want to do, is you want to take some time and read over your instructions. You'll also want to have a pen or a pencil handy to make some notes. Okay, right off the bat, it says here, what you're building, usually a picture of it, and then it says important, read this first. So basically this says, before you begin any construction, please look over and read the instruction sheet. Study each illustration carefully. Scrape plating and/or paint from cement contact points. Use only cement and paint designed for styrene plastic. As you build this kit, work assembly by assembly in order. Do not skip around. If you have any difficulty, go back and reread the step-by-step instructions. Okay, that's good advice. Over here, it has like a little legend, so it's telling you a number in a white circle means it's a non-plated part, so just a plain white part. A number in a black circle means it's a chrome or plated part. And then just a number by itself is the part number. So we're going to go through our instruction sheet and we're going to just review it. So again, you've got your numbering. So number 1, cement body halves together. So when you see a note on a step, read those notes first. And again, we're just reading through these to get an idea of what our steps are going to be so we can plan accordingly. Also, anything like this, pay very close attention to. So it's saying these hashed lines is where you want to cement. So if you look at this diagram, it's telling you to cement these two parts together, but look close. See here? It says cement here, here, and here. Don't cement here. And that's important because if you cement this in a later step, and you're going to know this because you read through your instructions, if you cement this now, you won't be able to attach the steering wheel. So kind of an important thing. So pay close attention to those kinds of notes. We've got this second step here, which is saying locate windows to body from outside. So we're putting the clear parts onto the body from the outside, not the inside out. It'll also have special notes that are usually indicated by stars or a asterisk. Windows are included in translucent orange, translucent purple, clear. Install your choice. So again, they're telling you it's how you want to do it. Now, notice that it goes from step 1, cementing these parts. It also gives you this note that says cement body halves together only where the seam is shown. When completely dry, the body can be sanded smooth where the seams show up and finally painted. Okay. And then it says here, paint these springs and axles in black. So here you're doing quite a bit of work between step 1 and step 2, because in step 1 you're assembling these parts. We're going to sand down the seams a little bit and we're going to paint it. So you're going to paint it, it's going to dry, you're going to come back and make sure it's dry, and then you're going to assemble your windows. So again, this is why we read ahead before we do anything on the kit. The next step is assembling the interior, and I want to point out here how they number everything, okay? So first of all, there's a note that says paint interior your choice of color. So again, it's up to you. Now, you'll see an explosion of these parts. And by explosion, I mean it's showing all of the parts uninstalled. So if you'll notice, the numbering on here is actually the order in which you'll want to install these parts. So number 1, you'll install the seat. Number 2, you'll paint your choice of color. So basically what they're saying is glue the seat in and then paint it. Step 3 is installing the gas pedal. Step 4 is installing the other pedals, so the brake and the clutch. And step 5 is installing the gear shift. Now, see these numbers that are not in circles, 215, 210, 209. Those parts correspond to the plastic parts on the tree. So you're not just going by, this looks like this part. You'll actually see on the plastic tree when we get it out of the bag how those parts are numbered, so you make sure you're getting the right part. On a simple kit like this, it's not so much a big deal because there's probably only one part in this kit that looks like this, but there may be multiples of parts that look similar but are actually different, so these numbers will be important. And then step 4, it's going over how to assemble the tires and the wheels. Here's a little more complicated. It's showing you how to install the front suspension and the wheels. Here we have our engine, putting our engine together, putting our engine in the vehicle, adding the lights to the front, adding the differential to the rear, putting in the axle and the rear tires, putting on the rear light, putting on the headers, putting on the velocity stacks or intake stacks, and then finally the decals. So we will go over these step by step through as we build. So I just wanted to make you aware of a few notes and why it's important to read through. Now I didn't use my pen except for pointing, but if I wanted to, I might have made a note to myself, paint this yellow, because I'm going to use a yellow color for it. So that's just my note for me, and you can use your pen and pencil to mark up anything you want, okay? And also, even though it says, follow step by step, do not skip around, well, I understand why they write that, but in reality, there is a way you can step around, because while you're waiting for paint to dry, you can put your wheels and tires together, things like that. You can also build sub-assemblies. So after we get the body glued together or waiting for that to dry, we can pre-assemble the engine, because all those parts can be assembled separately. They have to be installed in the proper order, but they don't have to be pre-assembled in that same order. Okay, so now let's open up the bags and take a look at the parts. Okay, so first thing first, we're gonna get our trusty hobby knife with our roll resistant cap so it doesn't roll off the table. We're going to open up our first bag of parts. Alright, there's our first bag of parts. Get those untangled there a little bit. Okay, now, remember how I pointed out in the instructions that the part numbers are listed in the instructions. So if you see here, okay, that part came off the tree. So sometimes parts will just come off the tree. That's okay. But as you can see, it left quite a bit of plastic there that we'll have to trim off later. That's what you want to avoid. So you want to avoid breaking the parts off the tree. Also, this part here that all the pieces are connected to, so this is referred to in a couple different things. It's called a tree. Some people call it a sprue. I call it actually a sprue and a tree. But typically I refer to the sprue as the plastic parts with all of the actual pieces removed. And it's a tree when all of the pieces are still on the tree. So that's one of those terminology things that you'll hear people talk about. All right, so if you look closely here, see if I can make this show up. So each part has a number located on the tree. This is number, I know it's hard to see, sorry, it says 63 here. So if we look at our instructions and we're assembling some parts, it's going to say use part 63. These are part 63. These are part 67, okay, and so forth. There's our engine house. Some of them, a lot of this is going to be visual, but when you get into more complicated kits, those numbers are very important. You don't want to mix those up. All right, so here we have our bottom part that our seat's going to connect to. Here's our seat. Here's the parts for the lamps. This is the other half of our body. Okay, so that's that bag. Now we have our plated parts, or chrome parts. And these look very nice. They're very nice polished chrome. They look very nice. And again, they're on a tree or a sprue, just like the other ones. And they also have numbers here. So you can look up the number for the part to make sure you're getting the right part. It said in the instructions, if you remember, it said scrape off plated parts or painted parts where cement contact points are. So what that means is these two parts here for the rear differential, we're going to glue these parts together. So what we'll need to do is, with our trusty hobby knife, is we're going to actually scrape some of the plating off where the two parts are going to glue together. The reason we do that is because model cement will not stick to the chrome plating. It will not stick to paint. So we're going to have a few places here where we're going to have to scrape some of this off so it's plastic on plastic, so the glue will dry and it'll bond the pieces together. Okay, so that's our chrome tree. Now, for the tires and the clear parts, I suggest you just leave them in the bag till you're ready to use them. It keeps them from getting lost and it protects them from getting damaged. Okay, now that we've read our instructions, we've ID'd, all of our parts are here. We haven't lost anything. The next step you're going to want to do, and this is important, is we're going to want to take all of these plastic parts and we're going to wash them. Now, when these are pressed in molds, sometimes they'll have a release agent that is actually inside the mold that enables the plastic to come out of the mold much easier. Now, on modern kits, it's not as prevalent as it used to be back in the day. Back in the day, you could actually feel residue on the parts, and you really need to clean those off because the glue won't stick to it, paint won't stick to it. So it's just a good rule of thumb, though, to give your parts a nice bath before you start working on them. Now, I do this in just warm water, not hot water, just warm tap water with a couple drops of dishwashing soap. I use dishwashing soap because dishwashing soap is actually going to cut through any oils that might be on the parts and get them cleaned up. After we wash them, we're going to set them aside and just let them air dry. Then after they're done air drying, we can start the build process. So let's get into washing our parts. Okay, so I've got a tub with some warm water and some dishwashing soap. I'm just going to place the pieces in the tub. Now, you can do this in your sink, but I would caution you, be sure you cover the drain or put in a plug because sometimes small pieces can fall off and they could go down the drain. Also, an old toothbrush works great for this. So basically, after they've kind of sat in the soap, just take your toothbrush and just kind of lightly brush them off. You don't want to use any pressure here, you just want to kind of lightly brush them. Alright, so that is all of our parts. We want to make sure before we dump out our water that no parts fell off. Okay, so now that I washed all my parts in my soapy water, I rinsed this out and refilled it with just clean water. So now I want to take my parts again, put them in the clean, non-soapy water, and just to rinse them off. And again, you just need to lightly rinse these. You don't use a lot of soap to begin with, so we're just rinsing the soap off, and then we will set our parts out, shake them off a little bit, and set our parts on the towel to dry. And then once these have dried, we'll be ready to start building. Okay, now that our parts are washed and we've got everything sorted out, we're going to get into the build. So our first step step one is to glue the two body halves together. So we're going to do that now. Okay, so as you saw earlier, this part was already broken off of the tree, so I'm going to show you how to fix this. And then over here, we're going to remove this one from the tree the right way. So we'll start with this one. First thing to do is you need to get your handy hobby knife. Now to remove a part like this, it's pretty simple. You just want to take your blade and put it, you don't want to cut into the part, so you just want to get as close to that, and we're going to clean it up a little bit. So this one's kind of tricky because it's not really level, okay? Like if we were cutting off this part, it'd be a little easier because it's more level. Or this part, it's more level. Actually, let's just go ahead and cut this seat off because that'll be pretty easy. So we're going to put our blade here. Let me zoom in on that a little bit. So we got the part here and the tree connects here. This little extra plastic around here, that's what's referred to as flashing. So it's basically excess material that's seeped out where the two molds come together, and the tree, or this is where the plastic is flowing through the mold. It's seeped out here a little bit, so that's flash. As you can see here on the seat, there's also some flash around the seat that we'll have to clean up. We'll get to that in a minute. So let's go ahead and get this seat off. So just take your knife, line it up, and then just rock back and forth a little bit, and see, it comes right off. And then we'll clean that up in a minute. So now let's get our body half off. That's pretty thick around there, so we don't want to damage the part. So if we need to, we can come in here at a different angle. Just take off a little bit at a time. Be patient, and there we go. We've taken it right off the tree. And as you can see, this already here is a lot cleaner than this one where it just came off the tree on its own. All right, so now that we've got our two body halves, we're going to clean these up and put them together. Okay, so to clean up your part, like I said, this one came off the tree. And as you can see here, there's a little gouge of the plastic out. That's what happens sometimes when parts get taken off the tree incorrectly. So we're going to clean that up by taking our knife and being careful, because again, this is very sharp. We're just going to trim off. You're not putting a lot of pressure on the knife also. We're going to trim that off, then we're just going to scrape it and get rid of that excess plastic. Same on this side. And this is just going to take you some practice to get the hang of, but that's part of model building. You're just going to keep doing it and practicing until you figure out how to do it. Okay, so here there's some flash. So to get the flash off, same thing, we're just going to get our blade there and just gently, not a lot of pressure, just clean that flash off, and then we can use the blade to kind of scrape to make the plastic nice and smooth there. So where do we have? Do we have any more flash? A little bit right here. Just scrape that down. Alright, now this piece looks pretty good. Alright, let's clean up. Oh, wait a minute, we got a little flash in here. Just scrape that out. Scrape that out too. Okay, alright. Now let's clean up this piece. Do a little bit of scraping right here. Again, please be careful. These blades are very sharp. Okay, and then when I'm scraping, I'm holding the blade not so it'll go in and gouge it. I'm actually got the blade going the other way, and I'm pulling the blade backwards basically over it. This gives the blades has enough cut to grab any parts that don't need to be there and separate them off. Okay, here we have some more flash. So we're going to go in here. We're just going to cut that off and go in here and clean up the excess plastic. Like so. Go in here, clean that up. And as you can see here, there's flash inside the hole. So we're just gonna pop our blade in there and just gently go around. Clean that out. Get it from both sides. Alright. Now I'm not putting any real pressure here because it's easy to take material off, but it's much harder to put material back on, so you don't want to take off too much. Alright. And that is off of there. Alright, now on to the next step, which is going to be test fitting. Now, always test fit. If you just go and start gluing things, you're going to find that sometimes things don't match up like you think they should, and that can cause some problems. Alright, so by test fitting, what I also call dry fitting, we're not using any glue, we're just putting the parts together and seeing how everything lines up. And then we can make some notes as to what needs to be adjusted and cleaned up before we glue. So for the most part, again, this is, an inexpensive kit, so it's not going to have a whole lot of detail. But you can see here, well, maybe you can't see, you can drag your fingernail here and it catches. So we don't want that. And the reason it looks like this one's catching is because the alignment pin, so you've got an alignment pin here and an alignment pin here, and also one down here, but remember, we're not gluing this part yet, just this part. So you got alignment pin, and then on this side, you've got where that alignment pin goes into. Now, when we put those alignment pins together, that's what helps line up the part. So, it's not bad, it's not great, and we can definitely clean this up a little bit. So the first thing we're going to need to do is actually glue these parts together. And then we can go back and focus on straightening everything up and kind of making things line up the way we want. Alright, so next step. Okay, now we're ready to start gluing pieces together. One thing you'll want to grab is just a plain old toothpick, and I like using Post-its because they have a sticky side so you can stick them and they'll stay. You can just use a piece of paper or, anything you want, piece of cardboard or something. But what we're going to do is we're going to start using this glue. Now please read the danger and the instructions on your glue, whichever one you end up getting. This one is extremely flammable. It's an eye and skin irritant. So it says read the instructions carefully. Also, this says it's an unbreakable bond, we'll see, but it's designed for polystyrene plastic models and toys. It also states here it dries clear, that's good. So here you can read all of your precautions. Basically says, keep it off your skin, don't get it in your eyes. So read the precautions and follow the instructions on your glue. But for our part, we're just going to put a little bit of glue on the piece of paper, and when we reference our instructions, it says to glue these two pieces together here and here, nowhere else. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to apply some glue to this area, and then we'll glue the parts together. Now, I've also got some painter's tape, and this is normally really wide, but I've cut them with my knife into thinner strips. We're going to use those to hold the parts together once we get the glue on. So let's get the glue on now. So we're going to take our toothpick and get some glue on it, and then we're just going to place some glue along the edge of the area that we're gluing. We also want to put some glue around the pins and around this side. Now I don't know if you can see this, but it's stringing, what we call stringing or leaving hair. So as you're pulling the toothpick off, the the glue is actually making like little hairs that string off. And that's just how this glue is. So you'll just have to watch for this. You don't want to put a whole bunch of glue on here, because the more glue you put on here, the more it's going to seep out, the more you'll have to clean up. All right, so there's our glue. And we'll take our other side, we'll line up our alignment pins. And this glue dries fairly slow, so it gives us enough time to work with it. I use super glue sometimes. I know other people who use super glue, and super glue is great, but for just getting started and building models, like your first model like this, regular run-of-the-mill glue is gonna be okay, because you'll need that work time to get things lined up. Now, once we've got our pieces kind of set where we want them, we want to take our tape. I'm going to go across here. Okay, and we're just going to tape them together. And after we get the tape where we want it, it's holding these parts together, you want to make sure your parts here that don't have a pin are lined up. Okay, so let's take this extra tape off. Okay, and now I'm going to do the same back here. Okay, now our parts they've got the glue in there. They're lined up as good as we can get them right now. Now it looks like we could put a little more glue on this part on the inside, so we can just take our toothpick, get some more glue on there, and just very carefully put some glue inside that seam there, like so. And then we're just going to set this aside and let it dry. Again, this is model building. You glue some pieces, you have to let them dry. Just let them sit, don't mess with it, and just let the glue do its job. In the meantime, like I said before, we can hop around and do some other things. So, what other things could we do? Well, let's see. What is our next step? Step 2 is putting the glass in the body. Well, we can't do that, so that's not going to happen. However, we could start putting this section together, because on mine, I'm going to paint this floor the same color as the body. I will paint the seat black, but we'll do that with a brush, but I'm going to spray paint the body in the same color as the car. So I might not want to do this yet, because I might want to paint the floor separate and then paint the individual parts before I glue them in. So not that one. Well, let's go to step 4. This is the tires and wheels. Well, technically, yeah, we could assemble our tires and wheels and get those done and set aside. This step, okay, well, we can't do this until this is dried and painted and looking nice, so that step's out of the question. Okay, 6 and 7, hey, we can pre-build our engine, because on mine, I'm going to paint my engine the same color as the car. So we could pre-build our engine components and get those done and out of the way. We can't install the engine yet, but we can pre-build it and get it ready. We could get our lenses and lights ready, but I don't think that's such a great idea, because they'll be small parts and we might run the risk of losing them. We can't put this in, we can't do this. And we can't do these steps. Okay, so what do? Well, while we're waiting for our glue to dry, we can build our wheels. So let's do that now. Okay, so here's all our parts for our wheels. We've got the inner and outer wheel. So we have a 2-piece wheel for the front, and that's what the instructions say to do first. And then we have our wheels, our inner mag wheels for the rear. And then we also have the inner wheel for the tire for the rear wheels. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to cut these off and cut our other parts off and get them ready to go. And again, if you look at our instructions, this one says it's a black circle with a number, so that means these are chrome plated parts. This is a rubber part. This here is a number in a black circle, which means this is chrome plated. We've already decided that. And this one over here is just a blank number, 63. That means it's a white plastic part. And then our tires. So let's locate and get all these parts ready to go. Okay, so here we have part 201, which it looks like according to the instructions, there's only one part. So that means that these are, you know, they're only one part number, but they're basically the same part, but there's two of them. So let's remove those from the tree. Okay, we have our parts removed from the tree. Now there's a little cleanup we're going to have to do on that, but that's okay. Also, I want to point out something. We're using the knife to cut the parts because I said I was going to build this with basic tools, but this is one tool that they're not very expensive. You can usually find them at hardware stores, and you can even, they have something similar that's used for cutting cuticles off your fingernails at the drugstore. But they're a great tool because you can see how challenging it is to cut with the knife, but this, because this has a flat edge, see it's flat there and it's angled, you can actually use these to get into these parts to snip them off much easier. And it still gets close because it's angled and it's flat on that one side, okay? So if you can find a pair of these and pick them up, that'd be a good investment, especially if you're going to be building scale models. If you're not sure, well, you know, you could use them for other things, but a hobby knife's going to be your most affordable basic tool for doing this stuff. All right, so we have our two wheel halves. We're going to take our knife and see where that edge is right there. We just want to use our knife and just really gently, not a lot of pressure, just scrape that excess plastic off and get it to look as, you know, smooth as we can. And we've got on this side, same thing. Again, be careful. Knife is very sharp. All right, so that one's clean. Let's clean up this one. Across this one, scrape it across. Now, remember what the instructions said to remove scrape plating from parts before gluing. So let's see how these are going to go together, shall we? These are going to go like so. So they go together and they kind of make like a motorcycle wheel. Okay. Now, the tire is right here. Let's get the tire out of here. Oop, see that? My knife is rolling. Got to put my anti-roll cap on it. All right. So our tire has a little bit of excess rubber on the inside, which is fine because if you look at our instructions say that there should be a little bit of rubber in here, but it's already been removed, so we just want to clean that up a little bit. So again, hobby knife. We're just going to go in here and we're going to trim out the extra plastic, and be careful because this is rubber, not plastic, so it will, if you're not careful, you'll cut your tire. That would not be good. All right, and then this goes in here. And this goes in here, and then they get glued together. Okay? Now right now it's just being held together with friction. So what we're going to do is, get these apart, since the two halves are going to glue together, we're going to scrape some of the chrome off the inside of this. And to do that, you just take your hobby knife again, and you're just going to lightly scrape the chrome plating. You can see that. We're just going to lightly scrape some of the chrome plating off all the way around because we want a good bond. Okay, so that one's clean. Now we'll do the inside of this one. And we're only doing the inside where the two halves are going to glue together. Okay, so now we're going to get a little glue. Put it on our palette here. Take our toothpick. We're just going to put a little glue around the edges. Oops, getting a little goopy on me there. Okay. Then we're going to take our tire. We're going to put it on that part. Oops. That part like that. We're going to take our other wheel. And we're basically, whoops. Okay, well, we're going to sandwich the tire between the two wheels. So let's get this one in here first. And then we'll put our one with the glue on it on top. This is a little challenging to do. And then we're going to squish those together so the glue is sticking to both surfaces. All right, and there we have our first front tire. Well, we have our only front tire. So there you go. So we're just going to let this sit and dry, and then that'll go on the Trike later. Okay, next up we have our rear wheels. So I've already cut them off the tree with my knife. So I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to make sure that that's nice and clean. Okay. Now, these parts are going to glue onto the back on this other piece, so we need to take some of the chrome off this too. So we're going to do the same technique. Just carefully scrape that chrome off the part. Okay, so I've scraped the chrome off these. These are ready to go. These are our non-plated parts. These are pretty much ready to go. I've already cut them off the tree and cleaned them up. So these two just fit together like so. And this is just friction holding them together now. However, what I have found is you can see the white plastic through the slots in the rims. I don't like that. So what we're going to do is we're not going to glue these rear wheels together just yet. What we'll do is we'll paint inside those wheels, and I'll probably paint the whole back of the wheel, but I'm going to paint it with black. That way when I put this on, you'll be able to see the black between the slots, which will make it look a little better and make it really pop. So we're going to set these aside for now, and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, our next thing we're going to glue together is the engine. We're going to get the engine started. Now, I want you to note here, this oil pan, because it's a black dot with a number in it, that means this is chrome. I want that to stay chrome, but I don't have to install the oil pan onto the rest of the engine. I can install that after. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my engine halves together, attach my cylinder heads, attach my intake manifold, and then I'm going to stop. I won't add the oil pan, the valve covers, or these parts, which are all chrome. I won't add these until after I've painted the engine. But this is a step I can pre-assemble and get taken care of so I can add the other stuff later after it's painted. So that's what we're going to do now. All right, so we want to locate our parts. So this is number 59 and 60, just like it says in the instructions. These are part number 61, and it's one part number for both parts, so they're the same. So they'll just go on each side. Then we have our intake manifold, which is part number 62. So let's get these off the sprue, the tree, and we'll get going. Now I want to make a note here. Before you start cutting all of your pieces off of your tree, make sure you've identified them, you know which ones are which, and you've made sure that if there are ones that are like, it looks like the same part, but it also looks like another part, make sure that you know where they go, and so you don't get those mixed up. If you're not sure, leave the parts on the tree, on the sprue, until you're for sure that you know which ones go where. Also, once you've cleaned all the parts off a sprue, now I suggest you don't throw this away. Hold on to it. Remember what I said in the beginning. Hold on to everything. Don't throw anything away until you're completely done. Because sometimes on some kits you'll go through and you'll think everything's off that sprue and you'll toss it, but you'll find out, oh, there was a little part still sticking out here that you didn't see, but you really need it. So hold on to your old trees or old sprues until you're done with the build. All right, now our engine block is pretty clean. When we cut it off the tree with a knife, it came off pretty clean. There's a couple areas here that we need to clean up. So clean that, and that is for the intake manifold. All right, let's check this. That looks pretty good. That looks good. Okay, we got a little bit there. Now see here, there's these little tabs sticking up. Get a better focus. There's some little tabs sticking up here. You don't want to remove those because those are like your locator pins for other parts. So be cautious what you remove. Only remove areas where you cut it away from the tree or the sprue. All right, so now that we have those, the first step is to glue these together. So we're gonna dry fit them first. Okay, so we know, okay, so that lines up, that lines up, and that lines up. Okay, so now, before we actually do gluing, I'm going to get a couple pieces of tape because I know I'm going to need to tape these together so they can dry. So now I've got my engine hams. I'm going to get some glue, put it on my palette, get my toothpick, and I'm going to add some glue to this side of the part. I'm going to pay special attention to the locating pins. Sorry, get that in frame. And as you can see, I'm getting some little hairs in here. That's okay, we can remove them afterwards. Okay, now we'll glue our other piece on here. Line up our locating pins. All right, now we'll take a piece of tape. We'll wrap the tape around that. You always want to leave a little piece of tape hanging so you can easily get it off. And we'll take our other piece of tape. We'll tape that around there. All right, and then we'll set that aside. Okay, so fast forward a little bit. Here's our body all put together. Remove the rest of my tape, and it is glued together very nicely. We'll have a little cleanup here, and I'll show you how to do that shortly. Also, the engine has dried, so let's take our tape off here. Also, if the tape is still good and it still has some stick left to it, I just set it to the side so I can reuse it later. Alright, so the engine is glued, the two halves are glued together. I think our next step is going to be installing we'll install these cylinder heads, one on each side, and then the intake manifold. So let's do that now. We'll get our glue. So if you look, one side is smooth and one side has the raised detail. So make sure you look at the pictures on your instructions, and you're going to see the part with the raised detail goes towards the outside. So, it's hard to pick up. There we go. So this side's going to go right here, and again, we're dry fitting. Now on these pieces, you'll notice there's no holes for pins, but there's pins here. So these are different kind of locating pins. These locating pins here just fit inside the cutout, so you can kind of get it in the general vicinity of the part. So we're going to grab some glue. We're going to put our glue on these. Cover it. We'll stick our cylinder head on. Oops. Try that again. All right, that one's on. Now we'll go ahead and do the other side. Get some more glue. Put our other one on. Make sure they're kind of lined up straight there. All right, so there we have. Our cylinder heads are on. Now I think I'm going to wait to add the intake manifold because I don't want to move those around too much while drying. So we're going to let those dry now. Okay, back to our body. As you can see here, if you run your fingernail across where that seam is, you can kind of feel where one side's not quite flush. Same down here. So we're going to fix that real quick. So to fix this, we're going to grab one of our inexpensive sanding sticks, and we're going to use the rough side to start cutting down some of that material so it's flat. So basically you want to just take your sanding stick and you don't have to put a lot of pressure. You just want to start sanding it down. And what that's doing is that's making these two pieces a little more well joined. So we're kind of, in essence, we're making that seam disappear. So we're just going to keep sanding. Run our fingernail over it, and we can already feel that that seam's getting smaller. Okay, all right, that's getting much better. A little more right there. I'm not putting a whole lot of pressure on this. You don't want to really gouge the plastic. You just want to wear down those high spots. Now, on a curves you have to be careful on, because if you just start sanding like this, you're going to end up with a flat spot. So when you're sanding on a curve, you want to kind of do a rotating motion like this to avoid getting that flat spot. Just like so. All right, that's coming out nice. Now we'll focus on this one. Now this one's got a little more prominent lip on it. So if you want, just keep sanding until that lip goes away. And again, just keep doing this until you're happy with it. If you think it looks good enough, then that's good enough. Otherwise, you just keep working at it until you're happy with the results. Like I said, we're not doing competition building or anything here. This is just your personal preference. We'll do the same down here. Okay, right here, there's another little lip. So we're just going to go along it this way until that's level, like so. All right. So now we're going to take the other side, which is the not so rough side, and we're going to go back over everything. And what this is going to do is it's going to take away a lot of those deep scratches from the initial sanding that we did. And you can feel it, it's just going to smooth it out. It's still going to be rough, but we'll address that here in a minute. Again, we want to rotate around our edges. And I'm going pretty quick here, but you don't have to go quick. Just take your time. It'll get there. It just takes a little time, a little patience, and just enjoy the time that you have here, a quiet time or whatever, or have some music going, whatever you need to do. This is all fun and relaxing. All right, so now we're going to do a little more of a polish. We're going to take our multi-surface and we're going to start off with the coarsest. So a lot of these are actually labeled step 1, step 2, step 3. So we're going to start off with step 1. And we're basically just going to start rubbing that whole area that we just sanded. And you can do this in a circular motion or up and down or left and right. It really doesn't matter because you're going to only have some really fine scratches. Now when you feel it, you're going to feel it. Oh my gosh, that lip is gone. It's not hanging on my nail anymore. And it's a lot smoother. Same thing on the bend. We want to always go with a rotating motion so we don't end up with a flat spot. And then on to the back. All right, now we're going to go to step 2, which is an even finer grade. And wow, you can really feel it getting nice and smooth. So now we're going to go to our fine step 3 to shine. This is pretty much just buffing out and getting rid of all those tiny little scratches that the sandpaper is put in. Well, that the sanding stick put in. And just buffing them out. All right. So that part is done. It's nice and smooth. It's not a perfect seam fill. If I was doing this for a more higher level kit, I would probably use a little filler. I would definitely do a lot more polishing to where you couldn't even see where the seam existed, but hey, this is a first model kit, so we're not going to focus on that. So now I'm just going to go ahead and sand these 2 little parts down here also that have a seam, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so our next step is gluing the intake manifold on. Now you'll have to take notice, see this part here, which is the distributor. This goes at the back of the engine, and if you look on your intake manifold, you've got a hole back here. That's where that distributor is going to go. So we got to make sure that is at the back. Also, I see a little flash on here, so we're going to just clean this up a little bit with our filing stick, just to knock that off. All right, and then we're good. So now we're going to glue this, dry fitting first. This will glue right into there. So let's do that now. Let's get a little glue. Put a little glue on here. Okay. Now this does have holes in one side and pins in the other. Press that down on there. All right, so now we're gonna let this dry. Okay, so now that we've got our body all nice and assembled and sanded down, ready to go, we have our engine block partially assembled and almost ready to go. What we're going to do now is we're going to actually start planning to paint. Now for the body and the engine, I'm going with this Rust-Oleum Marigold Gloss. I like the color. To me it kind of looks like a taco shell. And this is the 2-part paint, so it's paint and primer. Now, if your paint is not a primer, you'll want to get some just plain sandable primer, and you'll want to prime all this with a primer first. Now, a lot of primers come in different colors. I would suggest if you're going with a light color, go with a light gray primer. Now, you could use a white primer. The only problem with that is because this plastic is white, you don't want to use a white primer because then if you miss some places, you're not really going to know. So if you use a gray primer, when you primer this, you're going to be able to see that you got everything covered. Same with the engine. The engine's going to be this color, so we could primer it in gray. However, with engines with a lot of detail, sometimes I will prime them in a black and then lightly dust the top color over. That way the black primer kind of comes through a little bit and brings out a lot of the detail. But this being our first kit, we're not going to focus on that. We're just going to focus with a basic, simple paint job. Now, what you'll also want to do is go through your instructions again and see if you made any notes of all the items that you're going to paint when you're going to paint them. So, for instance, I know I'm painting the body and the engine this color, this marigold color. I also want to paint this part marigold color, and I believe those are the only parts that I want painted. So what I'm going to do to save myself some time is when I'm going to start spray painting, I want to have everything I need to paint on hand ready to go. So I'm going to take my floor off of the tree and get that ready to paint as well. Also, I just realized, so these are the mounts for the headlight and tail light. See, there's one here for the headlight, and then there's another one here for the tail light. Now, I want those to be the same color as the body. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint those along with everything else. And I'll show you a quick way to do that. Because these are small parts, okay, I suggest you leave them on the tree and paint them on the tree, because that way you have a way to hold them while you paint them. For the one that actually mounts on the back, I could just go ahead and mount that one on the back and paint it with the body. In fact, I think that's what I'm going to do. So let's do that now. Okay, so here's another time where if you're not 100% sure on which part goes where, follow the instructions. So this says it's part 56 goes to the back of the trike. So we can kind of see they're different enough, but also here is part 56, so that's that part. So we're going to take this off the tree now and install it on the car. On the trike, excuse me. It's a trike, not a car, for crying out loud. Come on, Dave. Okay, that part is off. Let's see if we need to clean it up a little bit. We do. So let's just take the knife and clean that up a little bit. All right, and then we are going to glue it to the trike. And again, we're going to reference our instructions. So that little edge goes down, so we want to make sure we get that installed right. So first thing first, we're going to dry fit it. Okay, and look at that, it fits right in there. All right, so now let's get some glue and we'll glue that. Pop that on there like that. Make sure it's straight. Don't want a crooked tail light. All right, now we're gonna let that dry. And then once that's dry, then we're good to paint the body and these other parts. Now, like I said before, I'm gonna leave this part on here so I can easily hold it while I'm painting it. Small parts can be challenging, especially when you go to spray paint and the force from the spray can actually blows your parts all over the place. That's not fun. I'm also gonna leave this floor connected because you won't be able to see these two spots here when I cut it off the rest of the sprue. So I'm just gonna let that stay there so I can paint it more easily. All right, so stand by and we'll get into paint. So before we get into spray painting, while we're waiting for this to dry, I wanna prep some of the other parts that we're gonna paint different colors. One is the seat. Now remember I showed you there's a lot of flash around there, so I'm gonna show you how to clean that. Again, you just take your knife and just lightly scrape around where that flash is, and it should come right off. Use the blade a little bit and just trim it, and then scrape, trim, trim and then scrape, trim and then scrape. Once you've got all the heavy flesh off, you can grab your sanding stick and just real quickly with the rough side, just sand around the edges, and this will take the rest of that flash and quickly get rid of it and give you a nice cleaner edge. Now after you go over it with the thick side, or the harder side, go back over it with the lighter. Remember, we're sanding, so you're gonna go high grit to, or low grit to high grit, so rough to fine. Okay, so a little bit more there. Then if you want to, you can grab your other stick and give it a real nice clean sanding, get all that flash off. All right, so now our seat is ready to go on and also get painted. Okay, the other parts I want to paint separate are these inner wheels, so that when we put the mag wheel on top, we can see the black inside there. So we're gonna also paint those. Now, these three pieces are gonna be black, and we're gonna paint them separately. We're also gonna paint them by hand with a brush, because we really don't, I didn't pick up any black spray paint, and these little parts like this, it's easier just to hand paint them sometimes than spray paint them. So we're gonna get right into that. Okay, so here we have our little starter paint set that I got at the Walmart with the basic colors. It also comes with silver. Also comes with this nice little brush. Now, because these are acrylic paints, they're going to be thinned with water. So because the paints are already thinned, we don't have to thin them to apply them, but we will want to wash our brush off when we're done. So I just have a little cup here with some water in it, and that's what we're going to use to clean our brush. So let's start with the black. Now, there's no way of really knowing how long this paint has been sitting. So I'm going to grab another toothpick, a clean toothpick. I'm just going to put it in here and I'm just going to stir it. And I can feel already that the bottom is definitely thicker than the top. So we want to stir it up. It doesn't take much. Now it's a nice black color. Now instead of just wiping that off, I'm going to put some on the brush because that's the color we're using. I'll set this aside. Always have a paper towel or something handy too. So now, first I'm going to paint the insides of these wheel backs. So we're going to dip a little paint in. Now you don't want a huge amount of paint. It just takes a little bit of paint and you'll get the hang of it. We're just going to put it in there. Now, I'm not priming these either, primarily because, like I said, I don't really have the primer on me, or a black primer, so I'm just going to use the paint. But because these wheels are going to be inside, you're not going to really be touching them, this paint should do fine. So I'm going to set that to the side. But you could prime these first and then paint them if you wanted. Of course, if you were going to prime them, I would just prime these in black primer and call it good. But again, it's how you want it to look and how you want to paint it. Okay, got a little paint on my finger there, that's okay. That's why we're using non-toxic acrylic paints, they're easy to use. Alright, so now I will paint the backs, but for right now I want that to dry, so we'll just set those aside. Now for the seat, to paint the seat, what you could do is put a piece of tape on here and a stick, and so you can hold it, but all I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the first half, let it dry, and then come back and paint the rest. Now, acrylic paints, because they are water-based, they actually dry very quickly. So we're just going to paint this on here. We're not doing any fine detail work, so we can just paint away. Now I don't want to paint the back because that's going to get glued in, but I do want to paint around the edges. Again, this is just take your time. We're just enjoying the time of building and being creative. There's no rush here. In fact, a good rule of thumb is never rush your builds, because when you rush them, bad things happen. You forget a step, or you do a step out of sequence, then you got to go back and you got to fix it. So, all right, I'm just going to do around the back edge here. I'm not going to paint where the seat will be glued in. I'm just going to go around the edge here to kind of clean that up. Sorry, out of frame. All right, so now that part of our seat is done. We'll set that aside and let it dry. When we come back, we'll paint the other half of this and the back of the wheels. Also, when you're done painting, remember to close up your paint, because it's very easy to spill this. Take your brush and give it a good rinse in your water. Get all the paint off it. And just take a napkin, just wipe it off. If you see there's still paint coming off, rinse it again. Okay. All right, and now our paintbrush is nice and clean and ready to be used for the next color. All right, so we'll be right back with the next steps. Okay, this first half of our seat is dry. Now we're going to just paint the other half. This is actually pretty good paint considering it's a starter set. This is a nice gloss black, meaning it's shiny, as opposed to a flat color, which would make it just, flat. It's not going to be shiny. All right, so that's that. Let's check out our wheels here. Okay, those look good. A little bit of paint, we could use a little more paint in there, which is easy to do because basically, now that we have one coat of paint on there, it's kind of like a primer. So this last little bit will stick very well because it's adhering to the paint that's already there. All right, so we're going to let those dry and then on to the next step. Oh, wait, before we forget, clean off that brush. And when your water in your cup starts getting dirty, just rinse it out and add some more clean water. There we go, ready to go for the next coat of paint. Okay, now that the inside paint is dry, we're going to paint the outside, the inside is dry. We're going to paint the backs of the wheels in black. So what I've done here is I've just put a toothpick in where the axle goes, and I'm going to use that to hold the part while I paint it. Now you're not really going to see the backs too much, but you will see it if you look underneath it, and I know it's there, you know it's there, so part of the fun of building these is painting them, so let's paint it up and make it look nice. This is easy painting also because you're not worried about, staying in the lines. You don't have to worry about painting, getting paint somewhere where it's not supposed to be. We're just pretty much just slapping some paint on. We want to go around the edge of the rim here. Otherwise, when we put our tire on, you'll be able to see that white line, and well, that just doesn't look good. Now you don't have to paint the rest of this because the tire's going to be over it. All right, so let's set this one aside and we'll get the next one. Okay, here's our other wheel. Same process as before. And you can use the toothpick to kind of rotate the part while you're painting it. Kind of makes it a little easier to do that way. Whoops, that's okay, just stick that back in there. Make sure we get all the white part that will show. Get it all painted. Now I'm doing these in black. You don't have to do these in black. You can do these any color you want. For my model that I'm building, I want them to be black, so that's what I'm painting them as, black. Alright, and then once again around the edge. Alright, there we go. The inside's painted, the backs are painted. Whoops, that's okay. Just grab it again. A little bit there. and then set it aside, let it dry. All right, don't forget, wash your paintbrush. Very important to wash your paintbrush. All right, on to the next step. Okay, so we're gonna do our first paint job. We're using the spray paint. Now, I'm in a well-ventilated area. I'm in my garage. The garage door's open. You don't want to breathe this stuff too much, so make sure you're in a well-ventilated area. When I'm painting, I'm going to do a thin coat first, a light coat, and I'm going to just kind of mist it to give the paint time to stick to the plastic. Also, I'm doing the inside and the backs of the parts first. Once they dry, then we can flip them over and paint the part that everyone's going to see. All right, so we're going to get started here. Make sure your paint can is shaken up. And when you paint, you want to do it like this. You want to press the button and lightly go this way and then let go of the button. And you want to go past your target a little bit. So it'll be on, off, on, off. And for that first initial blast, you want to be kind of far away because again, you're just putting a light coat. Okay, so let's get started. Oops, and that happens. So we'll just set it back up. That's why we're doing the bottom first. And there it goes again. We're filming live here. Okay. All right, so that's our first. Let's do a little more on that. All right, now this paint dries pretty quick, so we'll be back with the next coat. Again, you just want to do light coats. Plaster the paint on or you'll get runs and it just won't look as good. Okay. Okay, now our paint is on. Now you just walk away and let it dry. You want to let this what we call gassing out, to let all the chemicals evaporate from the paint so the paint sticks to the plastic really well and dries nice and hard. Typically I let this dry overnight or at least 24 hours, maybe more, depending on the paint. But if you've done this right and you've done nice light coats, it should dry completely so you can work with it the next day. Okay, so our spray paint has dried and our parts are painted and it came out really nice. Also, the black that we painted on our seat is done, and the black that we did on the inside of our wheels is dry, and if you can see, put that on. Yeah, now doesn't that look much better? You can actually see the black behind the mag wheel. Alright, so now we'll just get on to the rest of the build. Okay, now that our parts are mostly painted, we can circle back to the earlier steps. Remember, step 2 said to install the windows. We wanted to wait until after we painted because that way we don't have to tape off the windows and worry about getting paint on the windows. So now we're going to install the windows. Now to do this, just get yourself some plain old Elmer's white glue. I like to use white glue on windows because it dries clear and it doesn't fog the glass. If you get too much model glue on the glass, it will fog it and make it look horrible. So just some white glue should work great. Make sure you let it dry all the way though. Okay, for my model, I decided to go with the purple glass. I just think it looks good with the yellow color of the body. So first I'm going to take my parts and I'm going to make sure that I know how they go in. So dry fitting first. And that doesn't look quite right. Let's turn that around. Okay, that looks better. So I'm going to glue this glass in now. I'm going to set this to the side so I know which way it goes. Then I'm going to take my toothpick. I'm going to get a little Elmer's glue on there. And I'm just going to go around the edge where the glass is going to go. And I'm just going to use the toothpick and put a little bit of glue around this. going all the way around. And again, this dries clear, so you want to try to keep it off the main surface as much as you can, but if a little gets on there, it's going to dry clear. Alright, almost there. Alright, now I'm going to take my glass. I'm going to try to very carefully get it in there. I'm going to use my finger in here to support it from the back. Just going to drop it in. Wiggle it into place. All right. And there it is. Now we'll do the back one. All right, once again, we'll get our Elmer's glue on our toothpick. We're just going to slowly go around the outside again. Taking our time. Be careful not to bump our first piece of glass we put in. Alright, so now we'll take our piece of glass. Now on this kit, this is what we used to call Coke bottle glass. So on this side you can feel the bumps, on this side it's smooth. The way it goes on the model is you want the bumps on the outside. So now we're going to lay this on here. Alright, and there we have our glass. Now set this aside and let it dry for a good couple hours so the glass won't fall out, and we'll move on to the next step. Alright, so that was step 2. Now we're going to go back to step 3 where we install our seat, our pedals, and our shifter on the floor. So let's do that right now. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is locate our parts. So we have part 210, part 215, and part 209. We already have our seat. We already have our floor pan. So we need to locate these parts. Now they have a black circle with a white number, so that means that those are chrome parts. So we're going to look on the chrome tree and find those parts. So let's look for the gear shifter 209. Let's find that one first. And if we look on our chrome tree, right there, 209. So there's that. Now we need 210, which is right here, and 215, which is right here. So now let's get our hobby knife and remove these from the tree. Alright, now that we've got our parts off the tree, we can look at assembling them. So it looks here we go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Those are the steps we want to do. So the first thing is to glue the seat in. And look, here's a note. Paint interior your choice of color. We've already done that. Okay, so now we're gonna be putting the seat on the bottom. Now again, we want to make sure we take our knife and we want to remove the painted parts. So we're going to scrape a little paint off of here and scrape a little paint off of here, so when we glue that, it sticks in there and the glue has something to bond to. So let's get our hobby knife. Alright, and now on the back of our seat, take some of this paint off here, and this paint off here. Alright, now we can glue that onto here and it'll stick. However, first, since we're going to have to glue these small parts in also, let's take this time to also get the paint out of those holes. Again, you just want to use your hobby knife. Just go into the hole and just scrape the paint out. Okay, this way the parts glue in and they get a nice firm connection point to bond with the glue. And hopefully they will dry nice and hard and we won't worry about them falling out. Alright, now also, because these are chrome plated parts, we also need to remove a little bit of chrome from the point where it goes into those holes. So again, just take your hobby knife, and now some of these are going to be kind of small, so you're going to want to be careful. And again, just a little bit, not a lot of pressure, just a little bit of pressure, and just go around and scrape that chrome off of the part. And only the part that's going to glue in. So now we've got the chrome off there. When we glue this in, oops, doesn't want to stain, but when we glue that in and put glue in there, it'll have something to stick to. So let's do that for the other parts too. All right, so we're ready to glue these in. We'll get a little glue on our toothpick here. We'll apply some glue to there. Some glue there. Okay, make sure we get all the strings off, and then we'll take our seat. We're just going to sit it on here, like so. All right, and our seat is glued on. Now on to the next part. Okay, so the next part, step 2, is we already painted, so we're going to go to step 3, which is this little gas pedal here. And that, as you can see, there's a little arrow that points to this into that hole. So that's where we're going. So we're going to get a little glue. This glue dries pretty quick. So we're going to put a little bit of glue in the hole. We're also going to put a little bit of glue on the part. There we go. And then we will put that in the hole. Like so. If I had smaller fingers, this would be easier. All right. There's our gas pedal. It's in there and ready to go. Now, we can do the brake and clutch pedal, which again will fit in those 2 holes. So let me get some more glue, because that glue is starting to dry up a little bit. So put a little more glue on there. All right. Let's get a little more glue. I'm going to put these right on the parts. I don't know if you can see in the camera those strings that the glue makes. That's one reason why once you get better at building models, you can graduate to better cements that are thinner and tend to not get stringy like that. All right, so those pedals are in. Next, step 5 is the gear shift. So I'm just going to dip a little glue right on the gear shift there. Whoa! And I'm going to put this in the hole. Hold it for a second. All right. And there we have our interior is done. All right. Now we're going to let this dry and then we'll move on. Okay, so now we're going to circle back to this part of putting our rear wheels and tires together. So let's do that now. Okay, so here's all the parts for our wheels and tires. Now we have a decision to make here. The tires have 2 different sides. One side has these cool little red flames, and the other side just has this lettering that says Race Master. So you need to decide which side you want. Now you can just take your rim and pop it in there to get an idea of what it's going to look like. And I think I'm going to go with the red flames on mine, but you do whatever you want to do. So we're going to do the red flames. So let's start assembling these. Now remember, these are chrome plated parts, so that means we have to scrape the chrome off of the part that's going to get glue. So we're going to take our knife again, and very carefully we are going to scrape the chrome off of this little lip here. And the reason why we're doing that little lip is because if you look here, this fits over that lip. So the glue is going to contact this edge and this edge. So this is already pretty much scraped off, except for a little bit of paint there. We'll take care of that. So we're going to keep scraping the paint off, or the chrome off of this part. And we'll go all the way around. And light pressure, doesn't take a lot. You don't want to gouge the plastic. Okay, now we're going to get our glue. Let's get some glue on here. We are going to take our wheel, our mag, we're going to put it in there. And then we're going to take our other end, we're going to put the glue on this part. And then we're going to make sure you get the glue off your fingers. We're going to stick this back through here. Push the two parts together. All right, and there we have one wheel done. Set that aside. And we will do the other one. So we'll put our mag wheel in there. We'll get our glue. And there we have our wheel, there we have our rear wheels are now put together. So we can set these aside and let them dry. And on to the next step. Okay, so our next step would be installing the front wheel on the strut and installing all of this in here. But since our windows are still drying on the body and our internal parts are still drying on the interior, we're not going to do this part yet because we want those parts to be nice and dry before we mess with them. So what we can do, since our engine is already painted, we can install our oil pan and our valve covers and our distributor and the pumps and the pulleys to the front of our engine. So let's do that now. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is locate our parts. So our oil pan is number 214, and that is 214 right here. Our valve covers are number 213, and it's the same on both sides, and there they are right there, number 213. So we've got two valve covers. Then our distributor, which is also a chrome piece, is 207, and that one is hiding right, where is that one hiding? Sometimes it's all the shiny parts, it's hard to see. Oh, there it is right there, 207. So let's remove these parts from the tree. Oh, wait a minute. We have these two parts down here which are also chrome, 205 and 206. So there's 205 and there's 206. So we'll remove these from the tree with our hobby knife and then we'll get them installed. Okay, now we have all of our parts. So the first thing we need to do is install our oil pan underneath the engine. And the oil pan dry fits on like so. As you can see here in the picture, oil pan goes right here. So let's see if we can get that in. Okay, now this one has a hole and a pin, but we've got to take some chrome and paint off because again, the glue isn't going to stick to the chrome and paint. So let's take our knife, clean off a little bit of that extra plastic there, clean off our chrome. And also take your penknife, the point, and just go in that hole and just don't push, just spin it a little bit to get the chrome off there. Now on the engine, same sort of thing. We want to get the paint off of this part here. Okay, so now let's dry fit this again. And make sure everything lines up. Alright, and it does line up. So now, we'll get some glue. And our trusty toothpick. some glue right on here. And I also want to put a little glue around the edges here because the oil pan will be gluing to that as well. Alright, and then we'll take our part, make sure we're going in the right direction. There's our engine, there's our oil pan. It goes like this. Just line up that pin, push it on. Alright, there's our oil pan. On to the next step. Okay, so the next step is our valve covers. And it looks to me like it doesn't matter which way they go. So I've already scraped the chrome off of this. So they sit on here like so. And there's two little notches there that'll kind of help center it up for you. So I'm going to scrape a little paint off here and then we'll glue it on. Alright, now we'll get our little glue. Put it on there. We'll take our valve cover. Alright, our valve cover's on. Now we'll do the next one. Okay, get a little more glue. Put glue on there. Take our valve cover. Alright, our valve covers are on the engine. Looking good. Now we'll move on to the next step. Alright, our next step is going to be gluing the distributor on the top. So again, we'll want to remove some paint, so stick your knife in the hole there and just gently turn it around a couple times to get the paint out. Blow it out. Okay, and then on the distributor, this point that goes in there, we're just going to scrape off a little chrome, just rotate it around, blow it off. Alright, we'll get a little glue on there. Ooh, I said a little bit of glue. That was too much glue. Alright. We'll pop this in here. Alright, and there's our distributor. Now we're going to let this dry a little bit before we move on to the other parts because it's getting kind of hard to hold on to without touching parts that are still drying. So we're going to let this dry a few minutes. Okay, so our next part goes on here. So we're going to take our knife and just gently expand that hole and clean it out. The other part is going to go on right here, so we're going to take a little paint off there too. Like so. Alright, and then let's get some glue. Toothpick. And we'll dab a little glue on there. Sorry, dab a little glue on there. We'll take our part. I've already scraped the chrome off the back of that. Whoops. Well, that didn't work out right, did it? Okay. So we'll let that dry before we try the next part. Okay, so now we're going to glue this last part onto the front of the engine. We're going to get some more glue here. So stringy. This time I'm just going to actually dip the part in a little bit of glue. There we go. I'll just set it right in here in this hole here. Alright, so there we go. Now we're going to set this aside and let this dry up real nice, and then we can move on to the next step. Okay, so the next step, now that our other parts have started to dry, is we're going to start assembling this. However, step 1 here says paint these black, so I already took this part off the tree, and these are the handles for the steering wheel. So it says to paint those black. So we're going to go ahead and paint those black real quick. Okay, so just like the last time, we want to stir up our paint a little bit. All right, that seems good. We're going to take our paintbrush and we're going to put the paint on the paintbrush here so we don't waste any. Okay, we'll set that aside. Now we're going to take a little paint and we're going to paint the handles on the steering wheel. Now you don't have to paint these. I think it'll look good like this, so I'm going to paint mine. But you can do yours however you want. Alright, that one's on there. Now normally on a chrome plated part like this, you'd want to remove all the chrome before you paint it, because the paint has a hard time sticking to the chrome plating. However, these parts are pretty small, so if we tried scraping that chrome off, we'd probably end up breaking them off. So in this situation, what I would do is, what I'm going to do here is I painted a first coat black. Now after this dries, I'll come back and I'll put on a second coat just to make sure everything covered and that it gets a nice good coating. Now if you played with this after it's done and you did a lot of handling of it, the paint will probably come off. But if you just, for a kit that's going to sit on the shelf and look nice, and you're not going to be rolling it around on the ground, it'll probably last, life of the model. All right, so we'll let this dry and then we'll move on. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're moving all the way down to part 14, or step 13, excuse me. So the exhaust manifolds, or the headers, are going to glue to the side of the engine right here. Okay, these are chrome and this is painted. So what we're going to do is, while the engine is out of the model, we're going to scrape off the paint around those two connection points so that when we're ready to install the header, we don't have to try to scrape this paint off while the engine is in the trike. So we're going to do that now. Alright, we'll do that on the other side, and then when we go to glue on our headers, we'll just have to scrape the chrome off the back of those and we'll be good to go. Alright, on to the next step. Okay, now we're going to go back to step 5. And while we're still waiting for those handlebars to dry, we're going to do a little pre-cleanup. So the handlebar here is going to go in here. We'll glue that in, but we'll put a little cement on that to glue those two pieces together. But these side rails, 204 and then 203 for the other side, those glue onto the sides of this and down at the end. So what we're going to do is, because these parts are still on the tree, we're going to take our hobby knife and clean out these holes, because it'll be easier to do it while they're on the tree than after we take them apart. Plus that way we don't get mixed up as to which part is which. So we're going to do that now. So we'll take our hobby knife and we're just going to stick the point in there and go around and around and around a little bit and just clear out the chrome plating from inside those holes. Okay, we'll do the same on this one. And this one, and this one. Alright, so those are cleaned out now. Then on the handlebars, we need to scrape a little paint off these and also off this. Now, because this is a pretty delicate piece, I don't really want to use my hobby knife, but we're going to go back to our sanding stick. So these pins, you can see, they stick out. So, and actually it looks like that one pin there is kind of almost, it's missing is what it is. That's not great, but that's okay, we'll still get it. So there's one pin here. So we're going to take our stick and put it on the side of the pin and just lightly sand in a, we're kind of going in a rotating motion. We don't want a flat spot. And then we'll go to the other side of that pin. Same thing. And then just on the top of it, we'll just lightly drag our sanding stick across to get the chrome off the top. We'll do the same on this other side, although on this other side we do have 2 pins, so we'll go that side, we'll flip it around, that side, and then just lightly across the top, and there we go. So now those are ready to go. Now for this bottom one, got a pin on each side, so we're going to do the same thing. Make sure you're holding it to support so that when you're sanding this isn't flexing. So we're going to hold both with our finger, get our sanding stick on that pin, and just lightly sand and rotate. And flip it, sand and rotate, and then just the tip, and as you can see there, if it'll focus, there we go, we got the chrome off. Now we'll do the same to this side, and then we'll be able to move on. Okay, our paint on our handlebars have dried, and I checked it and I double coated it so it looks really good. We've pre-sanded our mounting points, so I think now we're ready to go on to this stage. So let's get all our parts together and then we'll move on. Alright, so we're ready to get started on this. So we've got our parts, we've got our glue, we've got our toothpick. So the first step, part 1, is going to be paint black. We've already done that. Under there. So we've already done part 1. So next, part 2 is putting the handlebar inside the body. So we're going to do that now. So now, take note, the handlebar down here on the forks has a curve to it. So if you look in the instructions, the curve curves up. So you want to make sure that this is pointing up in the right direction. And then we just simply bring this in through here. Simply. All right, and there we go. All right, so the handlebars are in. And the next step, step 3, is to cement front locating pin together from underside of the body. So that's in here. If you look in here, there's a little center pin there to line that up. So we're going to put some glue on that, and then we're going to push it together and let it dry. So let's get some glue, and we'll just dab it in there. Careful not to get any on the steering wheel if you can, and then we'll push it together. Make sure our steering wheel is straight. Okay, and then from this side, I'm going to get a little piece of tape. I'm just going to put a piece of tape there and lightly wrap it around so that holds that together. So now, while that's being held together with the tape, we can move on to the next step. Now the next step, that was 2, that was 3, so the next step is 4, which is this. So we're going to install the interior into the trike body. Now, if you'll notice, whoops, sorry. Now, if you notice here, we've got some notes. It says, insert interior to inside of body. Ribs on body locate to bottom of interior floor pan. This slot holds steering wheel bar in place. So this little cutout here is going to go around the steering wheel. And it's talking about these 2 ribs. If you follow these dotted lines all the way up into the inside of the body, there's 2 little points in here, these ribs. And if we look in here, there's one, there's the other. So that's what they're referring to. So those fit to the bottom of the interior floor pan. So those ribs are going to go right here. All right, and it says just slide that up in there. So that's what we're going to do next. So first we're going to test fit. So we'll put this in here. Look for those ribs and make sure our steering wheel goes where it's supposed to. Okay, this is really hard to do on camera. Okay, so put that back down in there. Come on. Wow, this is really challenging to do on the camera. Okay, so our interior is almost in, so we're going to put a little glue on there and a glue on there, and then we'll pop that into place. So we'll get our glue. Put it on there. Remember, they go to the bottom of the floor pan. All right, make sure we don't get our glue on our fingers there. Okay, so now I'm going to get another toothpick to help me move that around. Okay, so that's going to the bottom of the floor pan, like so. And then this one needs to go back a little bit, and then there we go. All right, so now our floor pan is in position, so I'm going to take another piece of tape and I'm going to tape this across here to hold that together so our part stays in place while it dries. We're going to let that dry and then we'll come back for the rest. Okay, while we're waiting for this to dry, it's taped up so it's held pretty securely. I'm going to do a little detail painting. So we have these trailing arms here and the springs. So I want to paint those on mine. So I think I'm going to paint the trailing arms black. Actually, no. This particular paint kit comes with some silver. We haven't used any silver yet. So I'm going to paint these trailing arms and those springs silver on this one. So let's do that now. All right, first we'll open our paint. We'll take our toothpick. We'll give that a good stir. Oh yeah, this really needs to be stirred. I can feel it, that it's really thick down there. So I want to stir that up really good. Now silver's got kind of a metallic color to it. So what happens with metallic paints is the metallic part will settle to the bottom, and then you just have like the translucent gray for the rest of the paint. So it's really important that you, especially if your paints you haven't used them in a couple days, just take a minute and mix them up real well so you're sure you're getting all the paint that you can. Okay, so now we're gonna clean this off with our brush, set that aside, and then we will do our painting. So we'll get some silver on the brush there, and we'll just go in here and very carefully just, you know, highlight those parts with some silver paint. And the silver paint is pretty thin, so it's not really covering all that well. So we may have to come in here and do a second coat. Now you can see here, the silver paint kind of flowed inside to the spring there, so the inside looks silver and the springs look yellow. I actually kind of like how that looks, so I'm going to leave that like that and then just paint the rest. So I'm going to paint those and we'll be right back. Okay, the next step is put the front wheel on, so we're going to do that now. So the way the front wheel goes on is we're going to spread these parts apart just a little bit. Now be careful because you don't want to break these, and then we'll slip the tire on there. So let's do that here. So I'm just going to try to get it in there first. Yeah, easy peasy, right? Let's see if I can get my fingers on both. Okay, so that is not working out very well. How can I do this? How about if I put this in here and I pull those apart a little bit? Nope. That won't work. Okay, so we're just gonna be patient and do a little bit at a time. Okay, there's our first hole. Come on, get in there. All right. So now our tire is on the front axle. So next, we'll install these trailing arms. Stand by. Okay, so make sure we have our right side, which is this one. And it goes on like this. So we're going to get some glue. We'll put a little glue in there. And since this side only has one tab, I'm just going to put glue on both sides. And then a little bit of glue in here. Alright, let's see if we can get this installed on there. Whoops. Alright, bear with me. Like I said, this is hard to do when you've got a camera between you and the part. So let's just get that to come on. Okay, that one is kind of connected. Let's just give it a second here for the glue to grip. Then we'll move down here to this one. Whoops! And of course it falls off. Let's try this one first. Hey, that works a little better. Alright, so those parts are where they're supposed to be. Let's just give the glue a little bit of time to start to stick. Okay, so there we have, that one's on. Now we're going to let that dry a while before we attempt the other side. So stand by. Okay, now that that part has set up, we'll do the other side. Same process. Get a little glue on here. Sorry, I'm off camera doing this. Just putting glue on the parts here. Alright. And we will try this on this side. Hey, look at that. Okay, so that first side that we did, you remember I said it was missing a pin. So this one is not missing the pin, and look how much easier that one went on. So that missing pin made a big difference. So just be aware that if you build this kit, this part here could be a little challenging, especially if it's missing that pin. So it's not that you can't do it, you just need to be a little patient and you know, take your time. So we'll let this dry up and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, while that's drying, we're going to move on to putting our headlight together. So we've got our parts here, and again, these are both chrome pieces. So we're going to want to clean them up and make sure we get the chrome off of them. There is a little bit of a tab right there where we cut it off the tree. Okay, so we'll clean this up a little bit. Alright, check this part. Okay, that looks good. Alright, so this part here has pins on it, so we got to be careful. So we're just going to lightly sand that a little bit to get the plating off where we're going to glue. And we'll go around our pins. Okay, so on this one we've got same situation, just sand off some of the plating so that it will stick. So let's get some glue and glue them together. Okay, just add a little bit of glue. And then put this on. On to the next step. Okay, now we're going to take some Elmer's glue, put a little Elmer's glue around here. Oops, like so. And then we will put, I'm going to use a purple light for this one, or a purple lens. Go let that dry and move on to the next step. Okay, now we are going to add this part to the top of the fork here to hold the light. So let's do that now. Okay, we'll clean this plastic up a little bit. And we will take our sanding stick and lightly sand some of the paint off of that tab there. Then take our hobby knife, scrape out a little bit of chrome plating from that spot there. Then get a little glue, drop the glue in there, and we will place the part in there like so. Oops, try not to stick it to my finger. Straight. Don't want our headlight pointing off in the wrong direction. Alright, so now we'll let that dry and move on to the next step. Okay, now I'm going to assemble the rear light and we'll do it just like we did the other one. So I'm going to do that now and then we'll just move on to the next step. Alright, now we'll just let that dry and then we'll put in our lens. Alright, we will let that dry and then move on. Okay, I think since these lights are going to be pretty delicate, because they're just going to sit in these little holes here, I mean we will glue them in, but they're going to be pretty delicate. I'm going to save those for last. So the next thing I think we're going to do is we're going to put the rear end underneath the trike so we can install our wheels and tires. So stand by. Alright, so here we go. We're going to take our rear end, we're going to put the shaft in here, and then it just snaps right in there between those two parts, and that's it. And you know, I don't even think that needs any glue. So we're going to call that part done. Okay, now we're going to install our wheels and our axle. So what I will do is I'll just put a little bit of glue on the tip of that and put it in one of the wheels. Okay, and then we'll slide our axle through here. Now I'm going to get just a little bit of glue, put on the end of this axle, and then put our other wheel on. Alright, and there we have our wheels. Let's move on. Okay, now that those have had a chance to dry, let's go ahead and install them on the trike. We're going to get us a little bit of glue on our Q-tip. We're going to get us a little bit of glue on our toothpick. We're going to put some glue in the hole there. And then just take our light, slip it in there. See if that's straight. It is not. There we go. Alright, that one's in. Now let's do the other one. Okay, same thing. Put a little glue in there. And take our light. Make sure it's straight. Alright. So those are, whoops, that one got a little bumped. All right. So there's our lights. We'll let those dry and we'll go on to the next step. Okay, so the next step we need to do is install these velocity stacks. Now, unfortunately, I can't get my fingers in here to do this, and if you see why, the velocity stacks go inside here and into each intake on that manifold, and here is the velocity stack. So, whoops. So not only is it hard to hold on to, but I can't get my fingers down in there to do it. I can get my fingers in the front ones, but it's going to be challenging. So for this, for me to be able to do this, I'm going to need to rely on a pair of tweezers. Now, any kind of tweezers will work. I'm using these inexpensive tweezers that I've used for a long time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the part, I'm going to tip the end in a little bit of glue, and then hopefully get the glue here, and hopefully I will be able to get this down in here and install it like so. So yeah, so that's going to be a challenge. I kind of wish I had known that this kit was going to be this challenging before I chose it for this video. Like I said, I have really big fingers, so I just can't get my fingers in there, but if you have smaller hands and fingers, you should be able to do it no problem. Alright, so that's the first two. So I'm going to go ahead and keep working on this, and then we'll get on to the next step. So stand by. Okay, so as you can see, that was kind of challenging, but not impossible. I got them all in there, and I mean, they don't line up perfect, but it actually looks pretty cool. Alright, so I think next we are going to check our instructions and see what we have left to do. I believe all that we have left to do is install the header pipes. Yep, that's all we have left to do is install the header pipes, but because those are going to be hanging off here, I think what I'd rather do is work on the decals next, because that way we can work on them without worrying about knocking the header pipes off. So I was taking a look at the decal sheet. Oops, sorry, bumping the camera. The decal sheet is actually really cool. The decal sheet's pretty cool. It actually has all kinds of different decals you can use. So we've got the you know, the Zeke's Tex-Mex, which is I think what's shown on the box, and a couple of, we got the Wild Wild Wedge, the Wild Wild Wedge like this. We've got some really cool wood paneling. So I think I'm going to use the wood paneling and a couple of other ones from here, and I'm just going to go with what feels good for me, but it doesn't really matter which decals I use. The process is all going to be the same. So when you're going to do your decals, you're going to need a couple things. You're going to need some clean, lukewarm water in a bowl or something that's big enough to accommodate your biggest decal. And you're going to need maybe a little bit of paper towel or a napkin, a clean one, some scissors, and we'll go from there. Now, it's really hard to tell on camera, but if you can look, you can almost see around each decal there's like an edge. So what you're going to want to do is when you cut out your decals, you're going to cut as close to that edge as you can without cutting into the decal. And then we'll go through installing them, and After we install them, you need to just set it aside and let it sit. I always let my decal sit overnight so the water can evaporate, the decal can stick really well to the model. So our next step is going to be applying the decals. Okay, so now we're ready to start applying our decals. Now the things you're going to need for this are a dish with some lukewarm water, not hot water, not cold water, and it needs to be big enough to accommodate your largest decal that you're going to use. You'll also need a couple of just basic Q-tips, a napkin or paper towel, and your hobby knife. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut out one or more of our decals that we're going to use. We'll soak them for a few moments. We'll let them rest on the paper towel. Once the decal is loose from the paper, we'll apply it to the model. So let's get started by first cutting out our first decal. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is take your hobby knife and let's just cut between these two right here. Now if you have a pair of good scissors, you can use these as well. We're just going to go around this side. And there are a lot of decals on this sheet, so we just need to be cautious of any other ones we might want to use. We don't want to cut them as well. Okay, so that one didn't quite come out, so we'll go down here again. Okay, a little more down here. And just take your time with this, no hurry. Okay. Alright, so there's our first decal. Now there are some extra decals here we don't want to use yet. So because we don't want to use those, we're going to cut those off this decal. Also, it's a good idea to keep your decal sheet away from your water and where you're working so you don't splash water on them, which can make them pretty much unusable if you're not careful. So let's cut this out of here. Alright. So there's those. Okay, now we're just going to take this decal and put it in the water and make sure it's completely submerged. And we're going to want to let this decal sit in the water for, I go about 30-45 seconds, but you can go up to a minute. You just want to make sure you don't let it soak long enough that it actually comes off the paper, because then it's going to be kind of hard to handle. Okay, that should have been long enough to soak. So we'll just slide this over here. We're going to put the decal on our paper towel. As you can see, it starts to soak up all the water off the decal. Now what it's doing here is the release agent is working and the glue is starting to come off. And if you just put your finger on it and move it, see how it slides around on the paper? That means it's ready to go. So now, we know that this decal is going here. So I like to just take my finger, and you can use a Q-tip or a paper towel if you want, just wet it, and just get some water on the surface where you're going to go. This will act as a lubrication kind of, so you can move the decal around. Now when we go to apply the decal, you want to try to grab it by the paper, and if you have to, you can slide it off a little bit so you can get a grip on the paper, and then you just try to line it up as best you can, and we're just going to basically slide it off the paper. Again, just take your time. Alright, now it's off the paper. Now, actually, that actually lined up really well, but you should be able to move it around a little bit if it's not exactly right. If for some reason it's not wanting to move around too easily, you can take a cotton swab and you can just add some water to it, and that should loosen it up. Let this slide a little bit. Okay, so that's actually right where I want it. Now, I take my dry cotton Q-tip and I just lightly make sure I'm not putting too much pressure on it. I don't want to move it around anymore. But what I'm doing is I'm just kind of flattening it out and making sure there's no air bubbles in there and kind of soaking up the extra water. Alright, so that decal is on. Now we want to be careful. We don't want to touch that until it's dry. If you do have a couple of air bubbles in there, some small ones, don't worry about it. When it dries, those should work themselves out. If you end up with a big one, like a big bubble, you can just take your hobby knife, poke a tiny little hole in the center of that bubble, wet your Q-tip, and apply some water, and it should lay down for you. All right, so we're going to move on to the rest of the decals. Okay, our next decal is nice and ready to apply. So we're going to take our finger, we're going to add some water to the area that we're putting the decal on. I'm going to slide it so we can get to it here. We're going to line it up like so. And we'll pull whoops. Nice and patient, take our time. Don't want to rush this. And again, this is one of those things that just takes some practice. So just keep at it and see how we can move it around there a little bit. Come on, almost there. There we go, right there. All right, now we'll take our cotton swab. Now these big decals in this kit, I have to say, are really nice decals. They're not too thick and they're not too thin. They go on really well. Okay, so got a little bubble in there. We'll just push that out to the edge. I know you really can't see that on the camera. I'm trying to get it in there, but kind of squeegeeing out the bubbles. Pushing them to the edge. Okay. So that one's on. We'll move on to the next one. All right, our next ones are ready. So we'll just do this. And while you're doing this, you want to be careful not to touch the decals you already have on there too much. Because you can, by touching it, you could accidentally move it around. And if you do, it's no big deal. You just re-wet it and move it around back to where you want it. Alright, that one's on there. Alright, I've already pre-soaked these. And I know I want this one to go here. Okay, just put our Q-tip a little bit there, move it into place. Alright, so there we go. So I accidentally soaked the wrong decal. I was going to put this one under here, but I don't think it's going to fit. So these little stars are actually separate decals, so I'm just going to see if I can put one right here. Oops, stuck to my finger. One right there. Just one right over here. Or wherever you want. There's no right or wrong. It's just what you want to do, how you want to do it. Okay. Just throw those there. And you know, I don't have really any place to put this one, but that's okay. I'm just going to leave this one aside. Now, once this dries, it won't be able to be used again. However, with your other decals that you don't use, don't throw them away. Hold on to them, because you might be able to use them on another build. Alright, now the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually apply a decal over a decal, and you can do that. You just want to give this a little time to kind of settle in, and then you can apply these next decals right over the top of those. So we're going to do that now. First, I'm going to soak them, and we'll pause for the soak time. Okay, these are soaked. And while these were soaking, I really didn't want to waste that decal, so I actually did put it back here. But what I did was, I just wrapped it around underneath. You won't be able to see that, and once it's dry, if you want, you could take your hobby knife and cut that and peel it off, but no one's probably going to see the bottom of that, so I would just leave it. In fact, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just leave it. Alright, now let's do these others. So we have our Southwest Texas House of Taco logos. And we're going to put these on the side here. So again, I'm just going to wet my finger, kind of wet the decal that's already there. I'm going to slide it off, like so. And then just line it up where I want. Alright, and then the same thing, we're just going to smooth it out. And now we've got a decal on a decal. So let's do this one now. Put your finger with the decal. Alright, flatten it out. Alright, there we go. That's looking pretty cool. I think I'm going to try to put a decal there and maybe one over there. Let's take a look at the decals and see what we got. Okay, so I've got these 3 smaller decals. This one down on the bottom says 1-800-EAT-TACO. The other one is just a little taco, and then this one's a pepper that says hot stuff. So I'm going to soak these and we'll put them on. Okay, so first I'm going to put the 1-800-EAT-TACO on the back here, kind of like this calling card. So we're going to slide this one off here. And kind of do it at an angle there, because I like how that looks. Did a little bit. There we go. On these smaller ones, instead of dragging your Q-tip, you want to just kind of lightly tap them. Alright, next I'm going to put my hot stuff right here. I've got a little something in there on that. Let's pull that out. Alright. Let's move that around a little bit. And about right there. Okay. My little taco, I'm put on this side. Right down here. Because that's just where I want it. Just a little taco. I also cut off these star things. So I think I'm going to put those in a couple places. I'm going to put the small ones right here. Don't forget to wet where you're putting it. Okay, it's on my finger. Just push that on there. There we go. And we can take our Q-tip. Maybe kind of move it around a little bit. Yeah. Alright. That looks good there. And we'll put the other one over here. There we go. And actually that lined up pretty good with where the other one is, so we're just going to leave it. Then I got these cool little stars. I think I'm going to put one here and one on that other side. And again, there's no real rhyme or reason to this. You just do it however you want. Okay. Straighten that star up a little bit. So, and we'll do the other side. Alright, and that one actually is pretty straight. So we're just going to leave it like it is, I think. Soak up the extra water there a little bit. Alright, so there we have our decals. Soak up a little water there. And looks good. I like it. That's all that matters. So at this point, do yourself a favor. Let this set somewhere and let it dry overnight. Letting it dry overnight allows all the moisture to evaporate out of the decals and it'll adhere them onto the plastic really well. Okay friends, we are ready for the final pieces to be assembled. We are going to add our exhaust headers. Now they're different per each side, so this one is 216 And the note here says part 217 for the other side. So let's get that first part, 216. Okay, here is part 216. There we go. Let's turn this so it's a little flatter. Alright, there is 216. We're going to do our normal cleanup. And we are going to remove some of the chrome. And that has some tabs, so we're going to use our sandpaper method to get the chrome off of those tabs. These tabs are pretty small. And we'll take some chrome off the rest of it too, just so it has somewhere to grab onto. Alright, now if you can see here, it's got some extra plastic on the end, so we're going to clean that up. Same way as we take it off the tree, we're just going to trim them off like so. And it's pretty thin, so it comes off really easily. Alright, so now our header is cleaned up and we're ready to install it. Okay, so here we go. We want to make sure our orientation is right. So we've got the model facing the right way. Our header is going to go on like so. And it goes on right here. And we've already sanded that. So we're just going to get some glue. Put some glue in there. Now, you want to make sure you don't overdo the glue, but you want to get enough glue so it can really hold steady. So we're going to set this in here. Now you just hold it for a little bit so the glue can kind of grab a little bit. Okay, now you might want to lay it on its side and just kind of so gravity is not necessarily causing a problem. So we're going to put this glue under here. Actually, let's use the paint. There we go. So now the headers are kind of, they're not hanging, you know, down like this, so there's not so much gravity on them. So we're just going to sit that like that, and we're going to let that dry for quite a while before we install the last piece. So stand by. Okay, we are ready to install our final piece. So let's get some more glue. Apply our glue to our mounting points. And, sorry, bumped the camera. And now be careful when you're handling it, you don't want to knock the other headers off. So then we will install these headers. Give the glue a second to stick. Alright, and same thing as before, we're going to try to set this, being careful not to mess up the other side, like so, and we're going to let that dry and we'll be right back. Okay friends, and here they are, your first completed model kits. We started off with a very simple sort of model kit just to cover some basics, then moved on to an actual glue together model kit. On this second kit, we learned more about the instructions, the steps involved, how to plan out the build process, and how to clean and prep the kit. We also learned how to ID the parts, remove them from the sprues, how to prep those parts for assembly, and how to assemble and glue the parts together. We also covered some basic painting and how to apply the decals. And I showed you that anyone can get started without a large investment in specialty tools and products. I would like to point out that this kit had some challenges, and it's definitely not the easiest kit to assemble. That said, I do think it worked well to expose you to some of the challenges you could face with any model kit. I'd also like to say that building scale model kits is not going to be for everyone. Although I do believe anyone can build a model kit, it may just not be the same experience for everyone. Remember, this hobby should be fun above all else. So if you find it's not that fun, then maybe building scale models isn't for you, and that's okay. My goal has always been to encourage people to at least give it a try, and my hope is that a lot of people will enjoy it as much as I do. If you do start building scale models and find you enjoy it, that's amazing, and I'm so excited for you. And as you begin to expand and build other models, just remember these 3 important tips, or as I like to refer to them as the 3 Ps: patience, planning, and practice. First, patience. This isn't a race. Building a model kit takes time, so make sure you're enjoying it and making the most of that time. Planning. Be sure to review all of the instructions more than once. Plan out your build and make sure you have the proper tools and supplies. Taking the time to plan your build will make for a much more enjoyable experience. And finally, practice. As with anything in life, we learn from our mistakes, and believe me, I've made more than my share of them when it comes to building model kits. The way we gain this knowledge and skill is by doing it, making mistakes, and learning from those mistakes. So essentially, practice, practice, practice. I really enjoyed making this video, and even though it's very different and a lot longer than my typical videos, I really hope I've encouraged some of you to take that first step into building your first scale model. Well, at least once. So this will wrap up my video tutorial on how to build your first model kit. I hope you found this helpful, and if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments, and I'll do my best to get back to you. Also, if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. It'll help the channel to grow, and I'd really appreciate it. So until next time, friends, be safe out there and go build something.